So how can we generate then intermittent series? Intermittent series for us are important because we deal with rainfall often, and this is one case. And in this group of slides, they are only two slides. I focused on rainfall because, of course, this is a relevant case, but also there are intermittent river flow series with which we often have to deal. And therefore, this is a relevant problem. Of course, with the different stochastic process, if we want to treat these variables like rainfall data as random variables, and we want to use the theory of stochastic processes, which means that we have to consider these variables not individually, but as a group of variables to reproduce the memory. And this is important because rainfall is intermittent, but still has some memory. When perturbation, a frontal storm comes, which may last for some days, typically in autumn or during the winter in this climate, then you may get some rainfall for more than one day. So there is correlation because you start from a period in which you have no rainfall, and then you have some days of rainfall, and then again a dry period. So overall, the time series has memory. So you need stochastic processes. But they have to be nonlinear because if you have some zeros, it means that the process is nonlinear. So let me give you an example. There are many nonlinear stochastic processes, and the class that I want to talk to you about, because it's very popular and is widely used for generating rainfall data, is the family of point processes. They are called point processes. And the most used approach, is the Neumann-Scott model. So you see, stochastic point processes, the most used approach is the Neumann-Scott model, Neumann-Scott rectangular pulses. And let me explain to you qualitatively, in a very descriptive way, how it works. And keep in mind that the first problem, is to generate storm occurrences, because you start from a baseline which is 0, no rainy days, and then the process, the natural process, is formed in this way. There is an occurrence of a storm, and then after a storm occurs, you have a sequence of data which are non-zero. It can be just one data, but usually, especially during, as I said, during winter or during the autumn, these non-zero data are clustered, grouped. So basically you start from a sequence of 0, you have to generate an rainfall event occurrence, and then once that you have determined that an event is occurring, then you have to generate the data. So this is the schematization that is used by this process. And let me draw it on the blackboard. Let me just display. Okay. Let me draw it on the blackboard because it's easier. These processes are used also for generating other variables other than rainfall, but the applications in rainfall are really numerous. And so we start from the temporal axis, T, and then we want to represent on the ordinate rainfall, and let's call it rainfall intensity, YT, rainfall intensity. Now, first of all, as I said, we have to determine the occurrences of the events by chance. And these points, which mark the occurrence of an event, these points are determined by a stochastic process, which just says if at a given time instant you have an event or not, you have the beginning of an event or not. We are talking of beginning, occurrences here. So let me just skip the second one, because otherwise it becomes complicated. So I have basically a stochastic process that says if at a given time t I have the start of an event, the occurrence of an event or not. And basically, this stochastic process counts just one parameter, which is the average time between beginning of events. So the process looks at the data, and I need, as in the previous case, an observed time series to calibrate the process. So the process looks at the data, and then it looks at the average time that separates two consecutive events. And this is the only parameter. And then it can perform the simulation. Okay. Then, within each event, the process is reproduced by using a series of rectangles. You see, after the beginning of an event, you have a series of rectangles, and in this case, for instance, you have for this first event, the beginning is here, and then you have a series of rectangles of rainfall, which can be superimposed on each other, because if you look at the second graph, it's just the sum of each rectangle. You see that it looks like a hietograph. And these rectangles, first of all, we have to determine the number of the rectangles, and the number of the rectangles is given by another stochastic process, which is just a random variable. So once that I determine that I have an event, then I start a second probability distribution which flips the number of rectangles, and therefore I have a second parameter. Then there is a third random variable, which is the distance from the beginning of each event to the beginning of each rectangle. You see that rectangles don't start together. They start after a while, after the black point. The rectangles start after a while, and the distance between the start of the event and the start of the rectangle is a random variable. And it's modeled with a probability distribution that has just one parameter. And this is the third parameter. And then each rectangle has a random duration. You see that they don't have the same duration. It's a random duration and a random intensity. They don't have the same intensity. Again, we have two random variables here, duration and intensity, and they are modeled through two more probability distribution. Each one counts one parameter. So at the end, we have 5 parameters. The 5 parameters, again, are the inter-arrival time between events, the inter-time from the beginning of the event to the beginning of the rectangle, the number of rectangles, average number of rectangles, average intensity, average duration. These are 5 parameters of 4 probability distribution plus a stochastic process. The stochastic process is just the first one, interval times, and then we have the 4 probability distribution dictating the number of rectangles, the distance from the beginning of the event to the beginning of the rectangle, and then duration and intensity of the rectangle. So, of course, you need to find the optimal value of these parameters. And these optimal values can be estimated by looking at the data. And then you can generate. And this is nonlinear. So far, I talked about rainfall estimation in one rain gauge, but in many applications we may need to generate rainfall for more than one rain gauge. And also, if we go back to the example of the river flows and autoregressive models, sometimes we may need to simulate river flows in more than one river contemporaneously. So, by taking the cross correlation among the series into account, not just the autocorrelation, also the cross correlation. This is possible. There are extensions for these models to the multivariate form. The multivariate form means more than one series. You consider and model 2 series, 2 or more series together. For the case of rainfall, the multivariate simulation is quite computer intensive. There are software, there are not really commercial, but there are software distributed for performing, for using, for the autoregressive simulation. You see that in R there is everything, but also for this simulation by using these point processes, it's possible there are softwares available. And you know, the multivariate simulation becomes quite computer intensive. And this is not really an easy task. For the linear processes, the task is easier. For this case, it's not so easy. Now, there is one thing that I want to say before I close this part of the program. We didn't talk so far of parameter estimation, either for autoregressive processes and for these processes. We didn't talk about parameter estimation, and we talked about parameter estimation for rainfall models, not in this case. First of all, let me say one important thing. If you work within R, you have routines for estimating the parameter of autoregressive processes already embedded in the program, so by default. So this is easy, and I didn't want really, and I still don't want to focus on parameter estimation because, you know, I think this part of the program is already a bit, not really boring, but not very exciting, so I don't want to focus on parameter estimation numerical procedure anymore because it becomes something very technical. And there is only one thing that I just would like to tell you, to anticipate to you, because it's an easy conclusion, and it may allow you, if you wanted to apply an autoregressive process, and if you want to understand what R does, it may allow you to gain a better comprehension of what the program is doing. And what I'm saying is just to anticipate to you, without any proof, without any detailed explanation, how we can estimate the parameters of an AR1 process. I could have done this before, but I just wanted to close my treatment with parameter estimation and with this note, because this is not really part of the program, but I want to anticipate this to you. In fact, it's very easy. It can be proved. Let me say first, what are the parameters of an AR1 process? Phi1 and sigma psi. These are the two parameters. We discussed this. Because the average of epsilon is 0 and epsilon is Gaussian, so the probability distribution of epsilon is completely given by knowing just the standard deviation. And then we need this parameter. Now, it can be proved that you can get an estimate for phi1 by equating it with rho1 of x. So if you take the log1 autocorrelation coefficient of the series that you want to model, this is an estimate for phi1, which is physically understandable, because if you have an increase of the memory, you expect an increase of the autoregressive parameter. It can be proved quite easily, but we don't want to go into that. There is an easy way to estimate this parameter, and also it can be proved that the standard deviation, the second parameter, is given by the estimate for sigma epsilon is given by square root of 1 minus r rho squared 1. So very easy. And this is also physically meaningful, because look, if you had to deal with a series that is much correlated, then you expect for sure an high value of the autoregressive coefficient. And you expect a small error. A small error because the series, having a lot of memory, may allow you to obtain a reliable prediction simulation. Instead, if you have no memory at all, then you expect that the standard deviation of the error is higher. I forgot to write here, sorry. Sigma of x. I forgot to write this, sorry. Because I was mentally referring to the situation in which x is has a standard deviation of 1. But indeed, it's not always the case. And let me also explain very quickly how you can perform an alternative estimation in Excel. So let's say that if you have an Excel sheet and you have your series xt, then you can perform, you can guess a value of phi1. So in a cell, you guess a value of phi1, and then you can write here a second column, which is xt minus phi1, xt minus 1. And then you can get here a column of epsilon t. Epsilon t is given by xt. I'm sorry, this is already the column of epsilon t. It was already here. Epsilon t equal to. It's already there. And then you can get here a column with squared epsilon t. And then you can get a second cell here with the sum of the square psi d. And this is an objective function for calibration, like we did in rainfall of models. And then you should you should identify the value of phi1, which gives to you the lowest possible value of the sum of squares. And this can be done in Excel with Ricerca Obiettivo, which in English could be matching target. I'm not sure. Or goals, no, it's goal seek, I think. It's goal seek. I think it is written like this in English. I'm not sure. But in any case, you have embedded in Excel in the under tools, under the tools menu. If you click here, you get a cell which is, I think, item, a menu item, which I think is goal seek. And then this routine allows you to minimize the content or maximize the content of a cell by varying the content of another cell. So it's easy for you to get two things. First, the best value of phi1, and you could make an experiment and see that it is very close to the autocorrelation coefficient at lag 1. But then you get also in correspondence of the best value of phi1 the series of the epsilons from which you can compute the sigma. This is done. You are estimating the parameters. Good. Now, I just would like to show you an example, and before showing you the example, I want to say first, probably I already mentioned to you that the water management plan of the Emilia-Romagna region, the region where we are, has been developed by estimating water resources availability by performing a stochastic simulation. Not really stochastic, sorry, a rainfall runoff modeling simulation. So they set up rainfall runoff models for the whole region, and then they used observed rainfall data to reconstruct river flows. Because they didn't have the observations for all the rivers in the region, and they used that. First issue. Second issue, I think it's a curious thing. And I had a PhD student that left the university 1 year ago, and she went to go in a professional company, a professional engineering company. They are dealing with the design of hydropower plants. And when she was hired, they asked her to improve the ground stochastic simulation because they wanted to generate river flow data with autoregressive processes and moving average processes. And this is an example that even in the professional work now, there is an increasing need of performing simulation. And then I want to show you an application that we did, it was a research experience that I did with another PhD student. Let's see. It's an example of application quite advanced. It was a research work, not a professional work. And I want to explain to you what it has been done. You have to find it, otherwise I have. And I just want to Now, the problem here was this. This is a tributary of, it refers to the Secchia River Basin. Again, I told you it's a river basin that I know quite well. And on a tributary of the river basin, there was the need to design a check dam. And you see here a detail of the check dam, which was, in the check dam, a bridge was developed, and they needed to remake this check dam. This is a really simple design experiment because the design of check dams is really very, it happens quite frequently, but they wanted to know, to have an idea of the peak flow in this tributary with no data available at all. And so the question, which was a research question, because for a practical meaning, for a practical need like this one shouldn't perform a so complex simulation study. It was just an opportunity to associate a research goal with a practical need, even if the practical need didn't justify really the involvement of such a massive research effort. But basically, the research question was how to generate flow data, and in particular flood data, for a catchment that is ungauged. And what we tried to do was to estimate a rainfall runoff model for the Hood Basin, and this was possible because we had some observations, river flow observations. And one was in the closure. You see the closure up there. Let me use the mouse. We have river flow observation here. Yeah. And also river flow observation in this cross section here. And the river flow observation were hourly river flows for the closure, and just peak river flows for annual maxima for the internal section. So the idea was, okay, let's calibrate, let's set up a rainfall runoff model by using the river flow data hourly observed here at the closure, and by using rainfall in 5 rain gauges, which are located one here, another one here, another one here, the 4th here, and another one. Okay, they are 5. Okay, because another one here. Sorry, they are 5 rain gauges, and with hourly rainfall data. So the idea was, okay, we have hourly rainfall data for 2 years, and we have hourly river flows for 2 years, the same 2 years at the closure. Is it possible to calibrate a rainfall runoff model on this basin by using 2 years of data and be able to generate for this tributary, which is located here, a sequence of annual maxima so as to be able to estimate the peak river flow? So there were 2 issues involved. First, the rainfall runoff model that needs to be calibrated on the Hood Basin, and it should be a model that allows you not just to simulate the closure, but also in internal sections. So this was the first question, calibration of the rainfall runoff model. The second question was, once that the model is calibrated, to be able to perform a long simulation of river flows. And to do so, you need to generate the rainfall data, because we didn't have enough rainfall data to perform a very long simulation. So there were 2 issues. And basically, what we did is, let me look at the figures. First of all, the rainfall runoff model, which was already available, but it was developed internally by us. And a rainfall runoff model that should be, let me look at the pictures just, should be able to simulate in internal sections. And we used what is called a spatially distributed model. I talked to you about spatially distributed model. And I told you that their advantage is that they can simulate at any point of the river network. And you see here the result of the model calibration, and the model calibration that was performed at the outlet. And this is what is called the dispersion diagram, simulated discharge versus observed discharge. I think I mentioned this diagram to you. And if the model was perfect, all the points should be along the 1-1 line. In this case, it was not that. And this is just the result of the calibration. And then we turn to what you see that the efficiency in calibration is 4.81, and the explained variance is another index that I didn't introduce to you, but it's very similar to efficiency. It's It's quite good. And then we turn to the simulation of rainfall. And but let me see. First of all, we turn before showing the graphs. So we turn to the simulation of rainfall. So we generated 100 years of hourly rainfall in the 5 rain gauges by using a multivariate stochastic rainfall model. And then we gave the rainfall, synthetic rainfall, in input to the rainfall, to the calibrated rainfall runoff model. And then we obtained 100 years of data at the closure and also at the internal sections. And first of all, what we did is to look at the closure section and make a comparison here between observed and simulated probability distributions. This is a strange way to visualize a probability distribution. And I don't want to go into the details. Let me just say that this is a way to obtain, instead of a curved diagram for this particular probability distribution, to obtain a straight line, because it's easier to compare. Instead, when you have a very curved diagram, it's not easy to see if it matches the observation. So we made a transformation in order to get the diagram of the probability distribution along a straight line, and you see and you see that there is the simulated data a bit higher at the closure with respect to the annual maxima. Look, this information, annual maxima at the closure, was completely independent from the data that completely independent of the data that we used in calibration. The data that we used in calibration for the model were just hourly rainfall for 2 years. Instead, these are annual maxima that were observed along a 50-year period. And you see that in the simulation there is a bit of overestimation, but the closure is fine. And then we went to the internal section and made an analogous comparison. Again, these data were not used at all in calibrating the model, and you see that the comparison is quite fine. So the deduction was, if the simulation is reliable at the closure and in the internal section, let's assume that it's also reliable for the very small basin. This is a strong assumption, because for the case of the closure, the catchment area was 1,000 square kilometers. For the internal section, it was 400 square kilometers. For the uncoached small catchment, the area is 15 square kilometers. So when you turn from 1,000 to 400, you have a big change. But the change is much, much bigger when you go from 400 to 15, because from 1,000 to 400, you reduce 60%. From 400 to 15, the reduction is really enormous. So, you know, you are not really sure whether you can assume this, but in any case, the assumption was taken, therefore obtaining, and let me see, this graph on the right, probability distribution of the peak flow for the given trajectory. And then we made a comparison with observations. So basically, you see, you know, that if you look at a river, you go there, you don't have any information on the peak flow, but if you look at the vegetation, where the vegetation starts to grow in the riverbed, when you start to see some brushes, it means that at that level corresponds the level of the peak flow with a 2-year reckoning period. This is given by experience and also by theoretical considerations. So when you look at the riverbed, you see in general that there is a part that is completely, let's say, naked, without any vegetation. So you look at the cross river section, and you see that vegetation brushes start at this level. And where brushes start, usually you are at t equal 1-3 years. Because you assume that every 1-3 years, then you get a flood, and if a brush grew up here, it's just scratched away by, I'm not sure scratch yet, I think it's correct. Anyway, it's broken away by the river flow. So at this level you are about 1-3 years. And then if you see here are 3, and you have a guy with you that is able to say this 3 is about 25 years old, then you can assume reasonably that probably at this level you have T equal 25. Which is not really true because it may happen that if the T, but still it gives to you an indication. So we went there, and then we estimated through a survey of the cross sections these levels, and then we estimated what is the river flow here. And we got Q and here. And made a couple of comparisons with that probability distribution. The comparison was, was not really, was supporting. And this is a kind of application which I think is a nice explanation, a nice example of all what we did, starting from stochastic simulation of rainfall through rainfall unfolding, not stochastic rainfall unfolding, rainfall unfolding, ending up with a design experiment. And as I said, this is something that is increasingly used. Okay, I will stop here. And on Monday we will meet because I will bring Professor. On Monday maybe that we don't meet because I take the opportunity to attend a workshop on Monday, so you will see Professor Polizetti and I won't bring you, while I will visit you on Tuesday. And maybe that on Tuesday we teach together Polizetti first and then me second, okay? Thanks a lot.